What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Black Ops storyline, which it consists of the Aether storyline and not Chaos or anything like that. This will contain Victus, but not anything to do with Cold War or Vanguard or whatever games you guys threw out there and stuff like that. But we hit 200 not too long ago, and I hope we hit 200 by this time, but this video was made a little bit before 200. But when we hit 200, this video will be out and possibly be used. So I made this video for educational purposes. I didn't use anybody's videos for this. I used all these resources by myself, and this will be in the end credits here. I'll see you guys later. And I hope you guys liked the video. And if you want to, subscribe to the channel, because we soon hit 200. The multiverse starts out with nothing but the keepers that made the ancient summoning key. This key could preserve the souls of the dead and could lead you to the physical place of being called Agartha. At some point in the story, the keepers inhabited the dark ether and created the most intelligent beings that were controlled by greed. Then comes Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man. They were both keepers, but Monty wasn't controlled by the Dark Ether, but the Shadow Man was. Dr. Monty tried to stop his friend, but this only started a war between the two clans. And the Dark Ether Pyramid can control the Apothicans and the Keepers. This war between the Ether would be known as the War of Agartha. When the smoke cleared, the Keepers were seen as the victors, and the Apothicans hid the pyramid on the moon, hopefully for no one to find. But that wasn't the case, at least until now. The Apothicans were banished from Agartha, and time went on after this. The Apothicans chose to attack Earth and other realities. The worms shot element 115 meteorites into these realities, and the Keepers fought the Apothicans again, but this time they had help from 4 great warriors. This event led to the Great War of 1329. There was a mining town in Purgatory Point in 1845. Jebediah Brown was 10 years old when he moved to this very town, and he and his mother settled very well. We fast forward 40 years, the miners find a blue rock that was called element 115, but they didn't call it that until the group 935 excavated it. This rock would corrupt Clive Farnsworth and turn him into a zombie, and then he would brutally kill Jebediah's mother. Jebediah would later have visions of angels visiting him to make the pack-a-punch machine that later Jebediah would try to construct the Agarthan device because the angels told him to. He was then later killed because the Horde attacked his town, and that somehow relocated him into Africa underground. The next person to find the element 115 was a German scientist named Ludwig Maxis. Dr. Maxis formed a group called 935, which he dedicated to excavating the element and studying it. Part of this group was Edward Richtofen, who was a Nazi doctor and bona fide sociopath. He was also a major general in the army during the World War. It is important to note that Richtofen was a part of the Illuminati and was working on behalf of their interests by joining Group 935. The two scientists had a facility near Warfen, Germany, that they called Dries. Dr. Maxis also recruited Sophia Maxis, Dr. H. Porter, Dr. Schuster, and Dr. Groof. Group 935 also had the 2 spies known as Peter McCain and Harvey Yena. Years after finding element 115, the Japanese found element 115 deposits and settled in a place they called the Rising Sun Facility in the swamp near Shinonuma. And they made a very similar group called Division 9. Group 935 was now trying to develop a teleportation device. The group started by teleporting dead corpses, but if the bodies were teleported at the wrong amount of time, they would disintegrate into slop. At some point, the bodies disappeared when they used the teleporter. Even though it was a failure, Maxis saw this as a new form of transportation. Maxis found out with the power of element 115 that he could bring the dead back to life. The first thing that they teleported was a simple walnut, and it worked. Maxis has now struck a deal with the Nazi Party, and they agreed to fund Group 935's project. Dr. Groff made a lab on the moon to test teleportation, and that is why and when they found the Aether Pyramid. They called this station Griffin Station. Group 935 started working on resurrecting the dead at the theater they called Kino der Toten, which is translated to Theater of the Dead, to those who don't know about this. They used a brainwashing technique on the subjects to condition their memory. Maxis was trying to get the test subjects to remember what happened to them in the past. This proved effective because they seemed very intelligent and had the ability to learn. Maxis was trying to gain control of the zombies to win the war for the Reich. One of the zombie subjects, 2-6, attacked and infected Sophia Maxis. Sophia tried to hide this, and then at some point Dr. Maxis found out about this, and Sophia was turned into a robot. Dr. Maxis took her to a Siberian facility for testing. 935 found remnants of element 115 and took it while they were there. While Richtofen was at Purgatory Point, he found the schematics of the Agarthan device and harmed. Takio was found at the Rising Sun facility, and he turned himself in because he thought what he was doing was barbaric and unhonorable. He told them what they were experimenting with with element 115, and so Takio joined Group 935 for test subjects. Another test subject for Group 935 was a Russian sergeant named Nikolai Belinsky. Nikolai's wife was killed in a bombing in the Battle of Stalingrad. We'll learn more about this when Primus Nikolai talks about his past. Primus Nikolai speaks of this when he's tasked to kill him in Gradkrovi. He was taken in during the Battle of Stalingrad by Germans and used for Group 935 when they killed his brother in Stalingrad in the same day. The third subject used was a Mexican named Pablo Marinas. We don't know much about Marinas because he wasn't the most valuable person of the story. These three were used for element 115 experimentation to unlock the human mind and tamper with the human brain. Or so that's what Richtofen said. Richtofen would soon betray Group 935 because Maxis would change the group's goal for experimentation. Therefore, the Illuminati really didn't want much to do with him. Samantha Maxis, also known as Ludwig's daughter, went through the teleporter and ended up on the moon because Maxis sent her there. Ludwig Maxis would commit suicide in front of his daughter while she was being teleported, and she would become very evil. Peter McCain parachuted over the Rising Sun facility and ended up crashing through the roof and was hung. While Dempsey, Nikolai, Takio, and Richtofen are at the Rising Sun facility, they form Ultimus Group and formulate a plan to meet Samantha Maxis. Richtofen needs the Vril device, the Goldenrod, and the Focusing Stone to defeat Samantha Maxis. One of the group members overloaded the teleporter with the Wunderwaffe and sent them through time. Ultimus went from 1945 to 1963 to Kino der Toten. While they were in Kino, Richtofen lost his diary in the facility. Samantha attempts to kill them at the Berlin facility but fails and sends a lunar lander towards the facility. The next facility they fly to in the lunar lander is a rocket launching facility in Russia. Richtofen assisted the Americans in the space race to get Griffin Station to get to Griffin Station on the moon. The Soviets hired Anton Gersh and Yuri Zavoisky, also known as the Pentagon Thief, to attempt to get rockets to teleport to the moon once they're airborne. Pablo Marinas, one of Richtofen's test subjects in the Siberian test facility, helped the Soviets make the rockets. It may have seemed that he died since Richtofen had removed his spleen, but he woke up after the group disbanded and tried to flee the facility while he was being chased by zombies. Ultimus would at some point go to America to help the scientists construct the rockets for the space race. Purnell would then create a facility called Broken Arrow in a place the Americans called Nuketown because the town had a nuke below the facility, or so they thought. This facility had an Aether pyramid in it and no one knew about it until the groups both found it. The Ultimus crew teleported to the early 2000s in a movie that a man, George Romero, is creating. The documents that are left behind bring back the dead to life, and the dead kidnap George, creating George into a zombie. or some sort of zombie thing. I don't know what it is. But the crew are in a room in the dark ether. I mean, just the dark. And the Call of the Dead group find the Viral and Richtofen's goldenrod. After this, they get the items they need. They teleport to an area in the Himalayas near a temple. Richtofen finds the focusing stone. In order to defeat Samantha, since we have such a huge time gap, we're also going to talk about the map 5, even though it doesn't have much to do with the Aether storyline. But JFK, McNamara, Nixon, and Castro are discussing the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they were discussing stuff about Samantha Maxis and what they were going to do about her. And the Pentagon is then breached by zombies. Samantha attacked the Pentagon and sent zombies and Yuri, or the Pentagon Thief, to terrorize the Pentagon. The four capture Yuri and question him about the zombies. Ultimus Group ends up in Camp Edward, also known as Nuketown. And that is what they figure out, that what Purnell was doing that entire time. They find the elemental shard, and they end up on the moon. Thanks to Maxis, the entire Earth was nuked, and many on Earth were killed, but one group survived, and that group was named Victus. The four main characters of Victus are Misty, Russman, Marlin, and Stuhlinger. Misty's father was killed by a zombie during the apocalypse, and she speaks about this thoroughly through the story. Russman was a former Broken Arrow employee, and with the recent loss of a job sent him crazy with the help of the Element 115 exposure. Marlin was just some smart geek, and Stuhlinger ate the flesh of a zombie that caused him to hear the voice of Richtofen. The group all met in a town called Transit. Stuhlinger had programmed the bus with Russman, and Misty and Marlin found each other at the bus station. This drove the group to go to the Japanese skyscraper called Doris, and they were looking for a way to escape. They end up in a desert looking for a place called Purgatory Point. They find Purgatory Point, and they go looking for the Agarthan device. Another group, 935, is excavating Element 115 in France. Two German scientists, Dr. Ludwig Maxis and Dr. Edward Richtofen, formed the group 935, but this time Richtofen views Maxis as more of a father figure towards his research. This new timeline consists of a group that we call Primus Richtofen. Richtofen was in northern France to discover the catacombs and statues inside of it. Maxis wanted to create a gateway between the realms, or time for Germans to win the war. In the excavation in northern France, Ludwig Maxis starts to hear Samantha's voice saying she knows the way to a place called Agartha. Alright. Tank Dempsey, Takeo Masaki, and Nikolai Belinsky all converge on Richtofen's location. The Element 115 and the voices that Maxis heard drove him crazy and unstable, and that led to his demise by Richtofen's hands. When Samantha sees that the four people have banded together, she asks for help from Agartha. The group sent the Maxis drone with Maxis' brain up to Agartha, and the drone was met by Dr. Monty. Even though Maxis didn't have a body, Monty made him a new body, but with the same soul, but a different outlook. Monty also brought Samantha back to the house in Agartha and cleansed her of the dark ether that had influenced her. Maxis had collected items from different realities and brought them to Agartha, which was a bad choice because it was making Agartha unstable. One of those items was the Chronorium, a book that told the future. Richtofen took the task of ridding all the zombies from all realities. He takes the Chronorium and takes to finding the summoning key. It is now the 1920s and we meet Salvador De Luca, aka Sal. He was a crime boss and gambler. Billy Handsome was a part of Sal's gang and was hired a hitman. Finn O'Leary was brought into the game because he was into gambling and rigging sport events. And Albert Weasel Arlington joined the game because of his reputation for being a master schemer and bank robber. The four were brought to the most secure prison ever, and that prison was, you guessed it, Alcatraz. These four are very important to the story, but Richtofen's blood is. His blood was important to the Chronorium that had supposedly changed. Richtofen had reached out to the Illuminati and Mob of the Dead dimension because they had the Warden build a secret lab facility under Alcatraz that the mob members never knew about. The mob members didn't know about the paradox, and so when they escaped they were killed, but they didn't die. Several times, but Sal always wrote in his diary that the plans that they had to do and the paradox. But they did live. Al made a plane and all escaped to the Golden Gate Bridge. There the three except for Weasel would die and the cycle would be broken. We are now in Morgue City, USA. We meet a new crew that consists of Jackie Vincent, Floyd Campbell, Nero Blackstone, and Jessica Rose. The group finds the summoning key and uses it to collect the souls of the damned. The Shadow Man told the crew how to get the gate worms because when you open the Pack-a-Punch machine, you'll let the apothecants free from the dark ether. They trapped the Shadow Man and the summoning key to be kept with the Keepers. The Keepers then gave it to Primus Richtofen, who appeared through a portal and disappeared when Richtofen took the summoning key. The entire Dimension 63 was left to suffer, and that dimension died. Literally. Richtofen used the teleporter to meet with other members of Primus near Warfen, Germany. Richtofen finds his Ultimus version in the room with the crew he fought with in France. He came out of the teleporter and shot his counterpart right in the face. He collected his soul, so therefore he didn't shatter a timeline. The actual Ultimus timeline wasn't tampered with because they were waiting in a cell in Area 51 with the supervision of Dr. Schuster. All of the members of Primus are very suspicious of Richtofen's return because he came back to kill his Ultimus counterpart, and does it to all the other Ultimus counterparts. Now the group is on their way to a castle to find Dempsey's Ultimus counterpart. The group stole one of the robots from this facility in Warfen, and they were shot out of the robot by an RPG. They found their way into a castle, and the group accepts Richtofen's plan to save the universe, and in the process Dempsey turns the Cyro machine off and kills his Ultimus counterpart. This dimension is known as the Pre-Tone Fracture. In this dimension we follow the origins of Ultimus Takio. All the major events of this are the same except for Division 9 after discovering the secret element at Shinonuma. But in this timeline the Rising Sun facility is overrun by zombies, hence making it a new facility called Zetsubonoshima. In this timeline, the facility is unacceptable for the Emperor and they don't experiment there anymore. The timeline also says for them to capture Takio and take him in for plant test, to do more plant testing for them, since all he really did there was plant test and use spiders. The Primus crew teleported to a ship that was about to send Ultimus Takio to the Emperor for further testing of plants. The group escapes the burning ship on a raft nearing the shore. The crew finds the Ultimus Takio in a cell. And Takio talks to his other Ultimus counterpart about their lives, and Ultimus Takio asks for Primus Takio to be there to kill him. Primus Takio does that, and Richtofen collects his soul. The group is now teleported to Stalingrad, Russia. They are looking for Nikolai's counterpart, and they find him in a robot shooter with his zombies. Nikolai sees the Primus crew and he starts shooting at them, but he is carried away by the dragon and is sent to the main part of the city in Stalingrad. Primus Nikolai finds Ultimus Nikolai, and they talk about their past, and that is why it's so difficult and why both of them used alcohol as a source to help. He talks about the same wife that they had before the bombs fell in Stalingrad. Ultimus Nikolai gets mad because he would have rather forgotten about the memory and shoots Nikolai in the chest plate. Primus Nikolai retaliates and shoots him in the face. Richtofen once again collects his soul, but this time they enter Agartha. The group is now taken from the ground into the sky into a lab in Agartha, and the group is met by Dr. Ludwig Maxis. Richtofen gives Maxis a hug, because he missed him and the two destroy the machine that teleported them there. Maxis opens the summoning key and finds the Shadow Man, who brings the apothecants from the dark ether to Agartha. And so they attack Agartha. The four heroes fight back and the creatures till their last breath. Maxis and his wife Sophia fly into the portal and all of the dark ether beings disappear into the night. Dr. Monty questions why the group is still in Agartha, and he finds the blood vials that they found, that they took, and he says that this will cause a paradox. The group then teleports to the 1300s, but they are now great heroes that killed the zombies. Monty didn't let them stay because the paradox might disrupt his perfect world and ultimately lead to his demise. We now move to Blood of the Dead. This is really Alcatraz, but with the characters of Primus. Primus kept traveling after they defeated the Apothecans in the Great War, and traveled to the prison because the Chronorium told them to. The members of Primus are met by the Warden, or Brutus, as the mobsters call him. Brutus breaks the portal so they couldn't escape, and another version of Primus Richtofen tells him to read the Chronorium again because it has changed. Richtofen now must now give his blood for the other souls. Although the Shadow Man wanted Richtofen's blood to escape from the Dark Aether. Brutus makes sure that Richtofen recognizes his fate. The group were stuck in a loop until the Shadow Man got what he wanted. He thought the only way out of this was to give into the Chronorium and siphon his blood for their escape. We also find out that Victus, after all, wasn't killed and buried, but they were in Richtofen's lab in the Cyro machines, cryo machines. Nikolai is currently the only Primus member left with a soul after killing the other Primus Richtofen. Primus traveled to Groom Lake in 1963, and Richtofen returned his soul into his body. Primus Nikolai doesn't tell the other Ultimus members about what his plan is to rid all dimensions of corrupt and evil negativity. So Nikolai needs the Agarthan device because he already has the summoning key. After meeting each other, the two groups travel to Camp Edward to find the elemental shard, which Purnell locked away. Monty is now aware that everyone is trying to build the Agarthan device, and Maxis finds this information and prepares to send it to them. He teleports Samantha and Eddie to safety, recognizing the danger Monty presents. The two groups spend time together after finding the elemental shard, and they drink around the campfire. Victus wakes up out of the ice boxes, and Stuhlinger tells the group to find the Agarthan device. When they find the Agarthan device, they send it to Ultimus and Primus. The two groups toast to a better future and to what they want to do after the paradox is resolved. Little did they know that Primus Nikolai poisoned everyone's drinks, and they all died, leaving Samantha, Eddie, and Primus Nikolai. Nikolai puts the elemental shard in the Agarthan device and destroys the summoning key. Nikolai tells Samantha to shoot him, and Samantha does it. Every dimension after that was sent to the Dark Aether. The Keepers, Apothecans, Victus, Primus, Ultimus, Dr. Monty, and the Shadow Man were all banished to the Dark Aether. They fought the Great War over and over, but they were always doomed to fail. Monty said the only reason their madness existed was because of them. Samantha and Eddie walk away from the Dark Aether, and they walk towards the light. When they reach the light, they really walk into another dimension with the same problems as before. Thank you guys for watching today's video. This was World at War to Black Ops 4, and this video took me over a week to make. I had to compile everything to make one video from scratch, from clips to the document you are hearing now, that were about 3,300 words. If you guys are new and like this video, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel because we just hit 200 subs. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.